I am Kyle Hoylman. I'm president of Cancer Survivors Against Radon. And I was asked to discuss a couple topics today. Number one, some of the policy research on the environmental side specific to radon-induced lung cancer, and some of the things that we're seeing happen that's being driven by bureaucrats, actually, which is quite encouraging. And then I was also asked to share a little of my personal story and how I ended up where I'm at today. So I'll start with that. I'm from a little town in Ohio, Chillicothe, and grew up on a farm. And the thing with farms, you don't move. You have a lot of land. Our farm was a tree farm, and my dad was a forester. His name was George. So we never moved until they kicked me out anyway after college. I made it about 24 years, and Dad said it's time to go. But in that time, we lived in a house, and we had dinner together every night and shared stories. It was a great childhood, and this was my best friend. So fast forward to 2008. It was about 2006 that I started in the environmental side with an interest in naturally occurring radon. And I was starting to become more interested in why we don't have policies to protect people from radon exposure. And one of the things that I asked my father to do was, well, let's test the house, Dad. And it came back at 30 picocuries, which is quite high. Fast forward to 2008, Christmas. Dad wasn't feeling well. In January of 2009, he calls, and in that very direct generational thing that those guys had back then, he said, I have lung cancer, son, and it's not good. And that was the end of the conversation. And I said, okay, Dad, it's not good. What are we going to do about it? Dad was 70 years old. He was probably the fittest 70-year-old that I've ever been around in my life. At the time, he was still walking 5 miles a day. Felt great. And he wasn't done with life. 6 months later, unfortunately, he was. He died with all of his sons and daughters and important folks in his life around him. And that's unfortunate. So I have a bucket list. I've been gold prospecting, which I have no interest in, but Dad wanted to do that. So we clear his bucket list, my brother and my sister and I. And that's kind of how I started to become more interested in not the chemical, not the chlorinated solvent side of vapors, but more of the naturally occurring, the stuff Mother Nature manufactures. And that's why I'm here today, is to talk about radon, which can be attributed to 12 to 15% of lung cancer. So it's something that is very important and we need to address. What I wish that we would have known when I was a child was radon's bad stuff. So it's colorless, it's odorless, it's tasteless, can't see it, touch it, feel it. A lot of people don't think it's there. It's radioactive, it comes from uranium. Mother Nature manufactures it, so it's hard to get her to step back and say, we're not going to make this anymore. When I grew up, I wish I would have known that every day living in that house was the equivalent exposure of hopping on the school bus every day, on the way to school, grabbing my 2 chest x-rays, and then every day on the way back home, grabbing my 2 chest x-rays on the way back to my house. Because at 30 picocuries, that's the equivalent dose relationship. It's 4 chest x-rays per day, radioactive dose equivalency. It's high. I wish that, and there's some data there on that, I wish that we would have known that 37% of your lifetime radiation exposure is attributed to naturally occurring radon. Now, 10 years ago, that number was higher. It was up above 40. Mother Nature didn't stop manufacturing radon. It's CT scans now. If you have a cough, if you have a sneeze, we're going to take a CT scan. So medical imaging is increasing, radon is decreasing as a percentage, but there's something that we can prevent. So that was important. Radon's a health risk when it's trapped in buildings. So outside, background radiation, 0.3 to 0.4 picocuries per liter of air. When it becomes a health risk is when you're exposed to it in concentrated levels in a home and it becomes trapped in that building. So today, we're making our homes tighter. It's even more important to be addressing radon because they don't breathe as well as they used to. It's more of a hazard. Energy efficiency is great, but we're also impacting the environmental health inside these buildings. The only way to know if the building has an issue with radon is to have it tested. Testing's easy, it's inexpensive, and it's not done. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do within our industry is to increase that awareness. Radon is a health risk. 21,000 people per year die of radon-induced lung cancer. Now, that's a number from the EPA from 1994. That's the last time that risk model was updated. I've taken a stab. I've got a data analytics background, and I've taken a stab at my own risk assessment, and if we updated that today, it would be well over 30,000 people. So there are a lot of people who are being exposed. They don't know they're being exposed. They're not given the opportunity to test. They're not aware, and they're dying. Every 25 minutes, someone loses a battle with radon-induced lung cancer. It's unfortunate. Radon, if you take it out of lung cancer as a whole, and these numbers are dated somewhat. We're going back 9, 10 years. But still, if you take that out and you look at it separately, it is the 6th cause of cancer mortality. It's the leading environmental carcinogen that we have to deal with in our homes. Synergistic with smoking. So prevention, that's our message. Prevention is smoking cessation, early screening, and radon screening of your home, and that's what we focus on. Every year, radon impacts hundreds of thousands of people, family members, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, and that impact is also expensive. It's estimated that radon, or the cost of not addressing radon, both direct and indirect, is well over $7 billion per year. It's a pretty significant opportunity to ease some of that healthcare burden on our society. Now, I mentioned I was from Chillicothe, Ohio. It's been on the news recently, and not for good stuff. It's one of the opioid capitals of the world. And one of the things that I kind of equivalated to this was 200,000 opioid deaths since 2000. That's significant. And it's been in the news here recently that, by golly, we're going to declare war on opioids. And yes, it needs to be done. 357,000 or more radon-induced cancer deaths in that same time period. Where's the outrage? There's not a bad person here. It can be prevented. Where's the discussion about the environmental carcinogen that's killing those people? How do we prevent it? It's actually pretty easy, and it is prevention. You test your buildings, you test your homes, you test your schools, you test your daycares, you test everything that has a roof over it. And if there's a problem, you fix it. I won't go into how to fix it, but it is easy to correct radon problems. Jay Lubin at the National Institute of Health estimates that 1/3 of radon-induced lung cancer deaths could be eliminated simply by lowering our buildings to below the EPA action level, which is 4 picocuries per liter of air. Technology absolutely exists to make that happen, and we're not doing it. We need policy, and that's our research aspect. How do we make this happen? Well, radon disclosure and awareness. That's the first way we do it. Right now, if you buy a home, you don't know anything about radon because nobody tells you anything about radon. Right now, 10% of homes are voluntarily tested across the United States at the time of the real estate transaction. 10%. In 2 states, Illinois and Minnesota, they have notification and disclosure laws, and those states now have 60%. So nonpartisan, revenue neutral, something that's easy to put into place. State cancer control plans. We need more exposure. Look at the white spots up there. Not a single mention of radon in CDC state cancer control plans. And finally, we need to bring our women into the mix. They are the most influential of all people in making sure that those homes are tested. And I'll leave today with Liz Hoffman. Liz is one of those folks who did make it 10 years. She was diagnosed early in her 30s with radon-induced lung cancer. She made it 10 years. She founded CanSAR. And I'll leave this up here as Dusty comes up and kicks me to the side here, and I'm out of time, but there is much more that we can do on policy research. HUD has now granted $450,000. That's the first substantial grant made to actually begin research on radon-induced lung cancer and how to prevent it. Thank you.